In the digital age, we are all actors wearing masks. Every search we make, every late-night message, every quiet admission typed into a search bar that knows us better than our closest friends. And behind these masks, we are told, lies safety. For millions, that safety came wrapped in three familiar letters: VPN, Virtual Private Network. A promise that your secrets would remain yours, that your movements online could vanish into the dark, untraceable fog of encryption. It sounded almost holy, an invisible shield against governments, corporations, hackers, a tool that gave ordinary people the illusion of control. But behind the marketing campaigns, the glowing ads of smiling young professionals sipping coffee while browsing safely, there was something else, something they never wanted us to see. Tonight, we pull back the curtain. This is not a story about one company, not about a single villain in a dark office. It is about an entire industry built on the oldest currency in human history: trust. But what happens when that trust is weaponized? What if the walls meant to protect us are the very ones keeping us inside a cage we never noticed? The story begins not in a skyscraper in New York or a glass tower in Singapore, but in a rented office above a bakery in Tallinn, Estonia. A group of 20-something programmers launched what they claimed was the world's most private VPN. They called it ClearShield. Within months, they weren't just protecting locals, they had millions of subscribers across the globe. ClearShield promised anonymity, protection, a way out of the surveillance world. But as investigators would later discover, it was never that simple. Because hidden inside ClearShield, and many others like it, was a quiet secret worth billions. A secret about where your data really goes when you click connect. And once you see it, you cannot unsee. This is exposing the billion-dollar secret VPN companies are hiding. Privacy is a strange word. To some, it means silence. To others, safety. But in truth, privacy has always been fragile, like glass, beautiful until it shatters. When VPNs exploded in popularity, it was during a moment of cultural paranoia. Governments were expanding surveillance. Corporations tracked clicks like hunters following footprints in the snow. And somewhere in all of that, VPNs found their golden moment. Browse safely, hide your IP, be invisible. The ads played on late-night YouTube streams, on podcasts, on subway posters. VPNs became less of a product and more of a lifestyle, like a digital invisibility cloak. ClearShield and its rivals like Nordica.net and FortisVPN weren't selling code, they were selling the feeling. And it worked. Millions handed over credit cards, believing they were buying freedom. But here's the paradox. To use a VPN, you must give them the very thing you fear losing: your data, your connection, your trust. And what the public didn't see was that many of these VPNs were quietly collecting logs. Some were tied to parent corporations with shadowy ties to marketing firms, data brokers, even governments. Investigators uncovered shell companies in Cyprus, Belize, Hong Kong, each VPN with a different name, but all roads leading back to the same handful of holding firms. The illusion of choice was just that, an illusion. One insider, speaking under anonymity, described it simply: "We didn't sell privacy, we sold the feeling of privacy." And people never asked what was behind the curtain. But behind that curtain, a machine was humming, and every second you believed yourself hidden, that machine was feeding, growing, building a business worth billions. A business that thrived on the one thing you thought you had escaped: surveillance. It began with whispers in cybersecurity forums. A researcher noticed patterns: VPN traffic that wasn't quite as invisible as advertised, pings bouncing off servers that trace back not to independent companies, but to data warehouses. The logs existed. And once one thread was pulled, the entire fabric began to unravel. A team of digital forensics experts revealed that several popular VPNs, including ClearShield, were quietly cooperating with what they called mirror networks, shadow infrastructures where data wasn't deleted, but duplicated. In simple terms, while the VPN told you your browsing history was erased, another copy lived elsewhere, hidden, archived, waiting. The question wasn't just why, it was who. Some pointed to advertisers. After all, the internet runs on selling our attention. What could be more valuable than knowing what people search for when they think no one is watching? Others pointed to intelligence agencies, nations with unlimited budgets but limited reach. A VPN could be the perfect fishing net. And then there were darker theories. Criminal groups laundering traffic, manipulating markets, even targeting activists. One whistleblower, a former ClearShield engineer named Daniel Kovacs, described it chillingly. Think of it like a two-way mirror. You sit in a dark room thinking you're invisible, but someone on the other side is watching everything. We built the mirror. Kovacs would later disappear from the public eye. His LinkedIn went dark, his personal blog wiped. Some say he signed an NDA. Others believe he was silenced. But his words lingered. If the shield was actually a mirror, then millions of people were already exposed. And the companies profiting from it were betting on one thing, that no one would care enough to look closer. Trust isn't built in lines of code. It's built in stories. The story of VPNs was simple. Faceless corporations are watching you. Governments want to control you. But we, the VPN, will save you. It was a hero story, and like all good stories, it spread. ClearShield's ad showed students in dorm rooms, activists in crowded squares, journalists filing reports under flickering lights. They were symbols, not users, symbols of freedom. But behind every symbol was a ledger, a database, a company's bottom line. VPNs became one of the fastest-growing tech sectors of the decade. Billboards in London, Super Bowl ads and sponsorships across YouTube channels. And with every click, every subscription, trust grew deeper. But trust is dangerous when misplaced. Because once trust becomes a habit, it stops being a choice. It becomes invisible. The truth, hidden under legal disclaimers and vague no-log policies, was that most VPNs were not designed to protect the user. They were designed to protect the company, to protect its profits, its partnerships, its survival. And while some companies may have started with idealistic dreams, the gravity of billions was too strong. What began as privacy became product. What began as security became spectacle. And the people, once again, became the commodity. So what is the secret? It isn't that VPNs fail. It's that they succeed, but not for you. For the companies, the success is staggering. Analysts estimate the VPN market surpassed $40 billion in global value, with growth projected into the hundreds of billions. But how? How could a tool that promises to not see your data be worth so much money? The answer lies in what happens in the shadows.
Internal reports uncovered partnerships between VPN companies and data analytics firms, agreements that allowed anonymized but still valuable browsing patterns to be sold. A click here, a purchase there, a late-night search typed into the void. Individually meaningless, but together worth more than gold. And the brilliance of it all? Users believed they were invisible, which meant they were more honest, more vulnerable, more raw than ever online. You were safest, they told you, which made you easiest to exploit. That is the billion-dollar secret. Not the shield, not the invisibility cloak, but the mirror. And as long as the story of safety sells, the mirror will never stop watching. The first crack in the facade came from a small courtroom in Zurich. A civil case, barely noticed at the time, revealed internal emails from ClearShield executives. Emails that mentioned data leverage, retention strategies, and client visibility. They weren't supposed to exist. The company swore it kept no logs. But the emails suggested otherwise. And when journalists got hold of them, the story spread like wildfire. Daniel Kovacs, the whistleblower, reappeared briefly in an encrypted interview with an independent journalist, his voice disguised, his words slow. They built a system designed to outlast us all. Deletion was never the goal. Monetization was. For the first time, the illusion cracked in public. Users canceled subscriptions. Regulators sniffed blood. Competitors scrambled to rewrite their policies. But for every crack, a new coat of paint appeared. A new ad campaign, a new logo, a new promise. The machine didn't stop. It adapted. Because when billions are at stake, truth becomes negotiable. By now, ClearShield had vanished from headlines. Acquired by a larger parent company, its name dissolved into a sea of rebrands. But the empire remained. VPNs had merged into conglomerates, their names interchangeable. Fortis VPN, Nordica.net, Safe Harbor. Each promising safety, each backed by the same few corporations, hidden behind offshore filings and holding firms. And the irony was painful. Users thought they were escaping surveillance, but surveillance had only changed uniforms. It no longer looked like a government agent in a dark van. It looked like a smiling ad on a podcast telling you that safety was just one subscription away. The invisible empire thrived, quietly, profitably, and the secret remained, in plain sight. Empires fall not because they are weak, but because they believe they are invincible. For VPN companies, cracks were spreading. Hackers uncovered vulnerabilities in supposedly military-grade encryption. Regulators demanded transparency reports. Lawsuits piled. But the biggest threat wasn't external. It was internal. The very users who had been sold invisibility began to see through the mask. Online communities formed, sharing research, dissecting contracts, exposing connections. For every ad campaign promising freedom, a new blog revealed betrayal. The giants were fragile. And deep down, they knew it. Because you cannot build forever on a foundation of broken trust. Lost in all the talk of billions and corporations was something quieter, more human. The journalist in Istanbul who thought she was safe, but whose browsing history was leaked to her government. The activist in Cairo who relied on a VPN to organize protests, only to be arrested when metadata betrayed him. The teenager in Ohio who used a VPN to escape bullying, only to discover his searches were being sold to advertisers. These are not statistics. They are stories. And they remind us that privacy isn't abstract. It is human. When a VPN lies, it doesn't just break a contract. It breaks a life. And that is the true cost. In the end, this story is not about VPNs, not about ClearShield, Nordica.net, or Fortis VPN. It is about us, because we built this world. We accepted the ads, we clicked the boxes, we believed the stories because they were easier than the truth. And the truth is simple. There is no shield that makes us invisible, no software that erases the fragility of trust. Privacy is not something we can buy. It is something we must demand, protect, and nurture. And yet, in the silence of night, when you connect to that glowing button that promises safety, maybe you'll remember, behind the shield, there may still be a mirror. And the reflection staring back might not be the company. It might be us. When the first wave of revelation struck, many believed it would mark the end of trust in VPNs. Headlines screamed betrayal. News anchors spoke of data leaks with furrowed brows. Regulators promised sweeping reforms. But then, silence. The machine kept moving. ClearShield's acquisition had buried its name. Fortis VPN and Nordicanet refreshed their logos with new colors, new slogans. Tech reviewers shifted their language from private to secure, subtle but significant. The words had been sanded smoothed, polished into something less controversial. And people, exhausted, distracted, desperate for safety, clicked subscribe again. Because silence does something remarkable. It erases urgency. A scandal that once felt like the end of the world fades into memory when the next headline arrives. A celebrity divorce, a political election, a war on the other side of the globe. The machine counts on this. For every whistleblower, there is a settlement. For every lawsuit, a merger. For every broken promise, a rebrand. And the public, caught between fatigue and fear, drifts back into the arms of the very companies they once cursed. But silence does not mean safety. In small, unreported corners of the world, the cost of these secrets lingered. A dissident in Belarus arrested after metadata traced his communication. A human rights lawyer in Manila whose emails, thought encrypted, surfaced in court against him. The silence after betrayal is heavier than the betrayal itself. It becomes a fog that blurs reality until no one remembers what was true, or even if truth mattered at all. And perhaps that was the point all along. We live in an era where control is sold like a product. Apps that tell us when to breathe, watches that monitor our sleep, cars that park themselves. Each device whispers the same promise: you are in control. But the cruel irony is that the more control we buy, the less of it we actually have. VPNs were the purest expression of this paradox. A single button, one tap, the icon glows green, and suddenly you feel free, anonymous, protected. But freedom bought with a click is not freedom at all. It is dependency dressed as liberation. The deeper researchers dug, the more they realized VPNs were less about privacy and more about perception. Behind the curtain of zero-log policies were vague disclaimers like, except when legally required, except for troubleshooting, except when preventing abuse. Every except became a crack in the shield, and through those cracks, reality seeped in. It wasn't just ClearShield. Nearly every major provider had skeletons. Court orders demanding user records, affiliations with shadowy holding firms, partnerships with data brokers. The illusion of control is a dangerous narcotic. It soothes, it comforts, and most importantly, it blinds. When users believed they were invisible, they behaved differently. Search histories grew more intimate, confessions typed more freely, browsing habits less cautious.
That intimacy, raw, unguarded, unfiltered, became the most valuable currency of all. And in a cruel twist, the illusion of control made people easier to exploit, not harder. A shield that is fake is worse than no shield at all, because at least without a shield, you know you were vulnerable. So what do we do with this knowledge? It would be easy to end here with cynicism, to shrug and say, nothing is private, everyone is watching, trust no one. But that is not the truth, not entirely. The truth is that systems, no matter how powerful, no matter how invisible, are still built by people. And what people build, people can change. The boy in Talon who launched ClearShield may have been naive, but he revealed something profound, that fragility is everywhere, that even giants can bleed. The whistleblower, Daniel Kovacs, may have disappeared, but his words linger like an echo. Deletion was never the goal. Monetization was. And the millions of users, ordinary people, who clicked connect each night, they revealed something too. A hunger, not just for privacy, but for dignity, for the right to exist online without being dissected into data points. That hunger is not a weakness, it is a compass. Because for every corrupt company, there are still communities of coders building open-source alternatives. For every betrayal, there are watchdogs demanding accountability. For every illusion, there is someone willing to pierce the veil.
The invisible legacy of the VPN scandal is not just mistrust, it is awareness. A reminder that nothing is unbreakable, that trust must be earned, not bought. And maybe that is the lesson worth carrying. When you stare at the glowing button on your device, when you see the icon turn green and feel that rush of relief, ask yourself, who benefits from this comfort? Because in the end, privacy will never be something a corporation can sell us. It will be something we fight for, together. And as long as we remember that, the mirror can never fully win. What remains after the secrets and scandals fade is the simple truth. Even in a world of surveillance, the human spirit refuses to be logged. Every system, no matter how advanced, carries a ghost. Not the kind that rattles chains in the night, but one that lingers in memory, in silence, in the faint traces left behind by those who dared to challenge it. For the VPN industry, that ghost is not a person, not a founder, nor a whistleblower. It is the awareness that people now know, that the curtain has been pulled back, and even if it's stitched shut again, the tear is still visible. Engineers in glass towers pretend it isn't there. They continue to redesign dashboards, redesign apps, produce glossy ads promising true anonymity. Yet in quiet conference rooms, the ghost hovers. Executives whisper, "What if it happens again?" This is the paradox of fragility. Once it revealed, it cannot be hidden again. A fortress might be rebuilt, its walls higher, its gates stronger. But everyone who saw the breach remembers that it happened once, and memory itself becomes the ghost. Ordinary users feel it too. Each time they press that glowing connect button, there's a flicker of hesitation, a pause between trust and doubt, a whisper in the back of the mind. Is this real protection, or just another illusion I want to believe? The ghost lives there, in that pause. But ghosts are not only warnings, they are also reminders. For Michael, the boy who once exploited trading systems, his ghost became silence. For Daniel Kovacs, the whistleblower, his ghost became exile. And for millions who once believed in VPNs as digital armor, the ghost became awareness, an invisible companion on every online journey. The irony is almost poetic. The very industry built on invisibility has itself been haunted, permanently visible in its flaw. And yet, ghosts are powerful precisely because they cannot be erased. They teach us something vital, that even machines, even corporations, even billion-dollar empires carry within them the seeds of their own undoing. And maybe that ghost is not a curse. Maybe it is a gift. Because the machine that hums beneath our lives, whether Wall Street algorithms or VPN servers in far-off data centers, is never invincible. And remembering that truth may be the only protection we truly have. In the end, it was never about code. Not really. Lines of programming can be rewritten. Servers can be upgraded. Policies can be rebranded. The architecture of secrecy can be reshaped endlessly, like clay molded in the hands of corporations. But the one variable they can never fully control is us. We are the human firewall. It sounds simple, almost cliché, but it is profound, because the last line of defense in any system is not encryption or two-factor authentication or firewalls of blinking code. It is awareness, vigilance, choice. The moment people stop believing blindly, the machine stumbles. The moment users demand transparency, the mask slips. The moment ordinary voices speak, loudly, persistently, fearlessly, the illusion cracks. The human firewall is not perfect. We are forgetful, distracted, vulnerable to comfort and convenience. We trade privacy for speed, anonymity for discounts, security for ease. And yet, when pressed against the wall, humans have an extraordinary capacity to resist. History proves this. Empires fell, not because their walls crumbled, but because their people refused to keep carrying stones. Corporations collapsed, not because their profits vanished overnight, but because their customers saw through the lie. So the question is not whether VPN companies can be trusted. The question is whether we will continue to let them define trust for us. The truth is harsh. Privacy will never be gifted from above. It will never be found in a monthly subscription or in the fine print of a terms of service page. It will always be claimed, fought for, demanded, nurtured. The billion-dollar secret of VPN companies was never just about data. It was about us, about how easily fear can be sold, about how quickly trust can be packaged, about how desperately we want to believe that safety is a button away. But perhaps the real story, the invisible legacy left behind, is that the human firewall has been awakened. Millions of quiet realizations, millions of subtle hesitations, millions of people asking questions they had never asked before. That is how change begins. Not with a headline, not with a scandal, but with a shift in the silent rhythm of human trust. And if that is true, then maybe the ghost of this scandal, the awareness of fragility, the doubt behind the button, is not the end of privacy, but the beginning of something deeper. Not a product, not an app, but a collective firewall of human will. Because in the end, the machine can always be rewritten. The question is, who will hold the pen?